Welcome to another edition of Teaching Restored, where we get to teach and talk and discuss how to teach the restored gospel of Jesus Christ. I'm Kevin Jones.
And I'm Julie Hilliard.
Let's not start off laughing already, Julie.
I know, I'm so sorry. So for the first time ever, Kevin stumbled over the introduction, and then I heard you almost stumble again, but then you caught yourself.
I did.
But I heard it, and it made me giggle.
There you go.
Radio announcer voice actually stumbled.
What?
Makes the rest of us feel good. You have the best voice in the whole wide world, and you go to say, like, nothing about this podcast is scripted, with one small exception.
And that one exception I can't get.
It's like one line. I'm making fun of you because I don't have to ever say it. So I can just tease you.
I'm making you say it next time.
Nope. I refuse.
Whatever.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. No, I think sometimes when it's not scripted, it just goes better than when it's scripted. Oh, wait. Do you think teaching is that way? It could be as well. Wait.
Oh,
I remember
wow.
Elder Bednar. Where was it? I don't remember if it was. I think it was in a leadership. We had a multi-stake leadership thing where he came and spoke, and if I remember, it was there. But he said something along the line, and maybe it was in conference, and so everyone's heard this anyways. I don't know. What he said basically was, when I go to Africa, the youth get up, the adults get up to give a conference or to give a talk in sacrament meeting, and they don't have it written out. They have maybe something real quick, small in front of them, just notes or something, but that's it. And they speak from the heart. He said, we in America, we have this thing of we write it all out and then we read it word for word, and that's the way it is, right? And no, I could see that in now, this is me speaking, not him, but I can see that in general conference where it's got to be timed, it's got to be, everything's got to be perfect. But even when it's not written out, people will go over in sacrament meeting all the time. Right. So, but I think a lot of times when we just go by the Spirit, that there's something to that, Right.
We had a really cool sacrament meeting yesterday, and the thing that really made it special, and the person speaking articulated this out loud, was the thoughts that were shared that weren't part of the prepared comments that were prompted by the Spirit. And I remember, specifically, the highlight for me of that sacrament meeting was the experience that someone said, I don't know why I feel prompted to share this. And it was just the most authentic, genuine testimony related to a short, beautiful experience that she had had. Anyway, it was a really beautiful sacrament meeting because of that specifically.
I like that. That's nice. And I like to do that. I think that's one of the things I love about our discussion and our podcast is that we have some things prepared, but then we go and we just go with where we feel the best, where the Spirit will guide us, and you'll say something profound. I'll go, wow. And then I'll say something mediocre and you'll go, good job, Kevin. And we'll move on. And so
how did I know you were going to say something like that?
So that's what we're going to do today. You're going to say something profound. I'm going to say something mediocre.
No pressure. And just, self-deprecating comments are not appropriate on this podcast.
Dang. All right. Well, great. We have to start over again. Let's re-record.
No, you're going to mess up the intro, so just keep going.
We'll just keep going. Okay. Question for you, Julie. Here we go. Have you ever, I'm sure you have, but can you think of a time when you were doing something and you were having trouble doing it, and you're like, oh, I'm trying to do it and it's not working, and then someone says, oh, all you need to do is and change one small thing, and you do that and you're like, what? That was it? The whole time? That's all it took? Have you ever had a time like that?
The experiences that pop into my mind usually involve me scrambling, struggling, wrestling with something, and then my husband coming in and being like, oh, just do this. And I'm like, dang it. Yeah. So yeah, I've had that happen.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Yes. So have I. Pickleball. Give a pickleball example, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you've had this with pickleball, but the there are those in pickleball who like to hit the ball really hard,
Mhm.
bangers, right?
Mhm.
And it can be tough to be on the defense of someone who just hits it hard every single
Yeah.
time. And I was having trouble, and then I watched this video of a guy saying you stand at the kitchen line with your arm out and your paddle out,
Mhm.
and you just hold it out there, and that's what you do. And I'm like, that's it. And I
Mhm.
did it. And I say it now and I think, well, no, duh. Because, usually you
Well,
have
then it's
your
a block. Yeah.
paddle, it's close to you, right? So you can swing, go to the side and swing or go to the other
Yeah.
side. But this one was hold it out in front of you, which you don't normally do. And
Uh-huh.
I started doing that, and it was like magic.
Yeah.
And it fixed it. It was incredible.
Because you could block the shots versus trying to defend yourself and swing at them. You're blocking.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's all it took. Here's
Mhm.
another thing. I make my own granola, and I have granola and Greek yogurt in the morning. I mix that all up, and that's good. Well, one of the ingredients is dried cranberries. So I have a bag of dried cranberries here, and I said, hey, Kelly, would you go get that? And then I got it. She got it for me, and then I looked on the back. And I'm trying to, just cut down on sugar overall, right? I mean, not have as, not stuff my face with sugar all the time, right?
Okay, this is good.
And then I noticed that there were 28 grams of sugar
Oh,
for dried cranberries. 28 grams of sugar in
wait, in a
one
single
third of a
serving?
cup. In
Oh
a
my
single serving, in one third of a
gosh.
cup.
I had no idea.
I'm fighting against myself here. What on earth? So sometimes it's the little things that if you just change one thing, you'd go, oh, okay, there you are, Peter.
Yeah.
And it just works, right? Well, I want to talk about that with teaching.
Okay.
So many times we're going along. It's like, okay, it's not quite there. What am I missing? I'm not connecting. I'm not, there's not as much participation. I don't feel like this is it. I don't know. You've had that. I've had that. We've all had. Every teacher of the gospel has had that at one point or another. So what I want to show you is something that I've been doing lately.
Okay.
People in my ward don't know I'm doing this. They're about to know that I'm doing this.
Oh, no more secrets.
No more secrets. Are you ready? Here we go.
Okay.
So every time, oops, hold on. That's double
Double
me.
Kevin.
Double me. There we go, Julie. Okay. So every time that someone starts teaching, I start evaluating. And I haven't shared the evaluation with anyone. It's just me. And it's not an evaluation of, are you doing a good job or are you doing a bad job? I'm actually trying to figure out what is going on in the classroom, and are there things happening that are repeated again and again and again that we don't realize?
Yeah.
Or something that happens. Here's another thing. I remember recently watching a video of me speaking in my professional work.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I do that every time? What? I do
Yep.
that? Seriously?
Yep.
It's not a bad thing, but I just didn't realize I did that.
Like it's
one
just a
thing.
habit, right?
Right.
Just like an unconscious habit.
Yeah. So I started grading people, and I've refined this grading. And I don't want to say grading because that's wrong. Evaluating is.
You're
What was
sounding judgy right now.
Yeah, I know I am. And I don't mean to, because it's not grading. It is an evaluation, but it's not to say you're doing good or bad. Yeah, Julie?
It's research.
And that's the way I feel, honestly.
Yeah, like you're not talking about judging. I think what you're trying to do, it sounds to me, and tell me if I'm wrong, it sounds to me like you're trying to trying to bring into consciousness some of the things that are unconsciously happening
Yeah.
by observing what's going on in teaching experiences that you're a part of, but not actually teaching.
Thank you. There you go. In fact, when I was doing my master's, I took an ethnography class, and it was my favorite class because it was basically with ethnography. There is no set. This is what my hypothesis is. You're just going to go in and observe, and learn what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I am pretty much doing with this class. I'm not going in to say, okay, you're doing bad or good. I'm not going in with a hypothesis of, well, if you only did this, this would be better. I just want to see what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So let me show you what I did as I sat there and I listened. So this is what I did. I would do it on my iPad here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I split the screen in two. And then on the left side, I would write out the question types.
Okay, like the question, like in factual or
So we
binary,
got binary, factual, explanatory, introspective.
Okay.
And then I would do it on the other side as well. Binary, factual, explanatory, introspective. And then I would count how many questions were asked and so this is the question and this is the answer side. So the question, say how many times the teacher would ask which one of these questions did they just say?
Yeah.
Okay. So I started doing that. Okay, good. I'd say, okay, oh, look at that too. Oh, another factual. Then they asked an explanatory. Then they went back to factual. And then I started also doing the answers.
Evaluating the answers? What type of answer?
So for example, if there are times when someone can ask a binary question but get a factual answer.
I got you.
Right?
I got you.
So I'd go, oh, that was a factual answer to that one. Oh, that was a binary. No, okay, there's an explanatory. There's a few of those. Okay, that's good. And I would just count them out. All right. Now I started to notice as I did that, and this is with several different teachers, I started to notice that the questions that were being asked sometimes were very rhetorical. So they'd ask it and move on. And so I thought, okay, I need to keep track of that too. So I just put a dot under that one and a dot under that one just to say, okay, just to note, that's a rhetorical question. They basically asked the question and moved on and didn't have anyone answer it.
Okay.
It just kept going. Okay. Right.
Wait, so really quickly, just can you give me an example of something like that? Like they would just say kind of like, I want you to be thinking about, but they weren't going to take time for responses and then they'd move on?
So for example, this happened in Nephi. Has anyone had that happen to them? And people would nod their head. Yeah, we've all had it happen and da-da-da-da-da-da and go on, right? There was no real answer. It was just a quick acknowledgement and then move on, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I started checking that. And then I also wanted to see how much of the time the teacher was speaking compared to the class.
Right.
And so I downloaded an app on my phone, and it's a chess app, and you can do the timers back and forth.
Yeah.
So when the teacher was speaking, I just let his or her timer run. And then when anyone in the class spoke, I flipped it and went back and forth. And I went to see how much of the time are you speaking compared to them. And that's been really eye-opening. And then I started to realize, okay, well, there's more than just questions, obviously. What else is going on in the class? And so that's where I went to...
Okay, clarify something really fast. Hold on, pause.
Yep.
So this chess, like the timer thing, are you at this point only timing questions and answers? Like the amount of time asked to ask the question, amount of time asked to ask? Everything. So it's just if the teacher is the one speaking, the chess timer is on their side. And if the class is engaging, chess timer's on their side.
You got it. So
oh my gosh, I'm so intrigued by this right now. This is absolutely fascinating me. Okay, I'm so excited.
Nerding out, Julie?
Totally nerding out. And I don't even care. I don't even care. I don't care who's listening. I'm totally excited about this. Keep going. Okay. I'm like formulating. Maybe I'm doing, what was the class? Ethnologolacking?
Well, I'm going to leave that there because that was just classic. Ethnologolacking. All right. I'm not even going to correct you.
Kevin, you're so mean. I can't laugh today because my tummy hurts.
I'm leaving it. Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry. But
Ethnologolacking.
I'm gathering data. I have no conclusions, but I'm so
Right,
excited.
right, yes.
Keep going. Keep going.
So I want to see what, so let's say it's 30 minutes for the teacher and 15 minutes for the class. Well, what is that made up of? What is
Yeah.
what is going on? So I didn't break it out into you're spending this much time doing this much time doing that. What I did though was put down, for example, I have stories or / explanations.
Okay.
And then how many times did they tell a story? How many times did they explain, the history of, and go on.
Context or whatever. Yeah.
Right. Then also on the opposite side, I had two different areas. One was around reading. Did they read a scripture or a quote that the teacher asked them to? And I actually marked those a little differently. For the scriptures, I would just put a / mark like that and then put a little S at the bottom.
Okay.
And for a quote, I would do a / mark, but with the Q, the little
Oh,
on
look
the
at you. Oh,
Q.
you're so fancy. It's like
Yeah,
code. It's like
it
Morse
is
code.
code. Yep. So I'd go, oh, look at that. There were 2 of each here. 2
Okay.
scriptures read and 2 quotes read. Good. But then I would also do unsolicited comments.
Oh, yeah. Like when people participated without the teacher prompting it.
Right. Oh, I got to tell you something. I got to tell you an experience, right? There was no question asked. Someone just said something and then they go. So that's where it started to get a little bit difficult though. At what point was it an answer to a question, or what point was it an unsolicited comment? Okay, can anyone explain this? So a couple of people explain it and then someone else says something. Is that, is that third comment still an answer to the question? And I'd have to go back. Okay, what was the question again? So, and I don't think it really matters in the end. It got marked down as something, and that's good. So It doesn't need to be perfect by any means, right? It really, really doesn't need to be perfect. But what we're trying to do is just see the patterns. Unsolicited, yeah. So basically, that's what I've come to, is this kind of a pattern. And then I'd look at it afterwards and say, all right, one of the biggest ones is, how often did the teacher speak compared to the class?
Okay, I'm so curious. Okay, have you done this across several classes now?
Yes.
Okay. Before you tell us anything, can I ask you what you think an ideal number would be, and then tell us what you discovered?
An ideal number for timing?
Yeah, like how much? What should the balance look like, in your opinion?
Okay, I'm going to say ideal. However, there are different classes. I mean, adult Sunday school is going to be a little bit different than youth, than primary, right? Okay,
so but what are you aiming for? Maybe not even a number, but give me like a feel for how you think the scales should shake out, because I've got an opinion on this.
Okay, the thing that I go for is 25-75, 25 teacher, 75 class.
Okay. That's like your Kevin Jones goal, your style of teaching, the way that you prefer to shape the interaction.
Yep. I want to be at least there, if not 80-20, 85-15 kind of thing, even. I don't want to do all the talking here, right? So I really want the class to be talking and interacting more than me. What are your thoughts?
So I was going to say something. So actually, I think that in my opinion, anything like tipping the scales in the direction that you said, past 50-50, is going to be like impressive, because I don't think that most people, if I was to take a guess about what it was, I would say it's probably flipped in most classrooms. But I agree 1,000% with you. And one of the things that's been kind of baking in my brain over the past few weeks has to do with this exact
Mm,
thing, this balance, because of the way that, oh man, and you and I are probably kind of reflecting on the same podcast because we both listened to a podcast recently
mm-hmm.
that was so good that talked a little bit about this.
Yep.
And part of what has been ruminating in my head is that the new way, if you will, of teaching, when we kind of shifted away from being teachers to being facilitators, was intended to set up like an 80% them, 20% you type of a discussion where the facilitator is only the 20% and that the discussion represents the 80%. But then it's almost like there's this gravitational pull back to the traditional model. And
Yes.
so our culture should be, based on the instruction that we've been given, definitely moving in the direction of much more participation and less instruction. But it's like this magnetic gravity, whatever you want to call it, that like just we keep
Mm-hmm.
defaulting back to reversing that statistic.
Yeah. In fact, I remember talking with someone specifically about their teaching style. They asked and they said, okay, this is what I'm going to try to do. This, I said, great. You know, what's your next step? They said, okay, I'm going to try speaking less, having them speak more. I'll ask more questions. Great. Do it. And they gravitated right back.
Yeah.
I mean, no, I don't want to say it really wasn't any fault of their own. It was just they went to return back to what they're comfortable with again.
Mhm.
And they got back to the point where they didn't speak less than the class.
Right. And I think part of why we're comfortable with it is because the culture in the classroom typically sustains
Yeah.
that instruction model better than the facilitation model, meaning that it takes a lot more, I'm gonna actually say in part skill, and
Yes.
preparation and, discomfort to be able to lean into the 80% participation model.
Yep.
And I think that that's why we gravitate back to it because people are pulling against us making an effort to shift in that direction.
They
And
are.
so
Right.
it feels more comfortable to the classroom to do it the other way, to just
Right.
get fed, right?
Let me give you an example. Um, I was recently called as Elders Quorum president and in charge. I mean, we have Sunday instructions. So what is that going to
Right.
look like? And I said, all right, we're going to make it a model where we are all talking, where we're all talking with each other. There's not a teacher who's doing it. And so I went back to an older model of read the conference talk. Here are the questions that we're going to be discussing in class. And I'd send that out to them a week before. So hopefully they read it, read their questions. They come to class. We split off into groups of 5, maybe. And for most of the time, we are in those little groups discussing those questions. Then at the end, last 10, 15 minutes, we all come together and we talk about what did you learn from each other? What kind of things came out from this, right? Now, that is probably the easiest way to make it so that everyone is discussing, that everyone has a part in it, right? I don't think it's the most effective way, but it's the easiest way. If anyone can pretty much do that, right? You don't
Mhm.
have to have a ton of skill. You read the conference talk,
Yep,
you come up
yep.
with 5 or 6 questions, you break them into groups, you do that, you come back and say, "What did you learn?" Boom. And that is a great way to do it. Now, I think there are better ways to do that overall, but if you're just going to start somewhere and you're thinking about time, and I don't want to be the sage on the stage, I don't want to be the expert here. I want this to be a full uniting discussion where we can all hear from each other and gain different experiences. This is an easy, quick way to do it.
Mhm.
And to your point, I've had many people, a number of people, either directly to me or roundabout say,
Mhm.
I'm not comfortable with this. And then almost every single time they follow it up with, but maybe that's the point.
Oh gosh, that's awesome. I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
Yeah, because
thought,
it doesn't feel comfortable.
no.
But you know what's so interesting? One of the points on that same podcast that came out is that, this really stood out to me. The idea that we talk about church culture like it's a bad thing, like there are negative things
Right, right,
about
right.
church culture. And we're talking about the teaching culture right now within the church. And we say it with a little bit of kind of like a negative tone to it.
Hmm.
But the reality is that we are trying to create a church culture in a very intentional way. And so it is trying to, in a way, shift the culture to something more intentional instead of allowing the culture to dictate how things play out ongoing. And I think that anytime I think about this idea of, this massive ship, right? And when you go to turn the ship, it's this tiny little trim tab on the rudder that actually changes the direction of the ship. It's a tiny little thing that
Right.
has the ability to move this massive, massive ship, kind of like you were talking about, this little small change
Hmm.
that can make a massive difference. Well, the ship has the resistance when it's turning of the water, of like all these different things. And I think we have to anticipate that there's going to be resistance, but you don't like alter the trim tab back and just like, oh, we'll stay this course because it's
Right.
more comfortable. Right?
Right.
You
Yeah.
keep turning, and that's so part of it is I think that we just have to be so intentional about it that we're willing to endure the discomfort. I actually will call it out sometimes when it's uncomfortable. I'll
Good.
be like, because nobody will talk. I'll just be like, are you uncomfortable? Because I'm not. I don't mind. I don't mind the silence. Keep hanging out, guys. I'll meditate. Keep coming. You know what I mean? Because it is
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
Yeah. And my dear wife Kelly, when I would come home from work sometimes, and I'd tell her what's going on, she goes like, I can't believe you do that. And I would say sometimes, my job is to make people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That's actually what I want to do. Now, I'm not trying to do that to be mean or anything, but they're not going to grow if they're not uncomfortable to some
Yep.
degree, right? And so
Right.
again, I'm not trying to make people uncomfortable, but that is what winds up happening a lot of times.
Yeah. And that's what winds up actually creating change. Like you're not going to
Yes,
create change without discomfort.
that's right. That's right. Okay, so what what do you think I found when I timed?
My
What,
guess, my guess is that you found like 75-25, 75 the teacher, 25 the students, or being generous at very least, I would say like 60-40, 60
that's
teacher, 40.
that's spot on. Spot on.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, being very generous, 60-40 typically. Yep.
Yeah.
There was one time where someone was trying to make it be mostly the class,
Yeah.
and it actually came out 50-50. But
And
they're specifically trying to make it most of the class
yeah.
speak, but still they got in their own way. It was really
Yeah.
interesting to watch.
Did they tell you that they were doing that?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
And so do you think though, so sorry, and I don't know exactly where you're going with this, but I just want to, while this thought is in my mind, I don't think that shift could happen overnight. Like you said that they were trying to intentionally do it. Do you think that being able to get to that goal of, 80-20 or whatever, or 20-80, I keep 80-20 rolls off the tongue, 20% teacher, 80%
Right.
class, that is probably an evolution. It's probably not
Yes.
something that you
No,
go
no,
in and just do, right?
no. It's so hard to just do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, work your way up to that. Little baby steps to that. Great. But you have to recognize that it's even happening. You sometimes have to recognize that I tried hard and I still didn't get even close to where I wanted to be.
Right.
Wow. Okay.
Right.
What little things do I need to do to change?
Right. You know what
And
this
that's
is?
great.
This is
That's improvement.
conscious it's conscious incompetence, which is a
Yep.
phase you have to go through to get to unconscious competence, right? You
Right.
wanna be able to, without even thinking about it, do things well, but you
Mm-hmm.
have to go through this phase of failure, and you become conscious of that failure in order to make changes that shift into habits. So this is the conscious incompetence phase.
It is. But we have to embrace it. We have to actually seek for it.
Yeah.
Right? If we don't seek for it, we're just doing what we've always done.
100%.
That's not going to help. So, all right. So that's that. What do you think I found as far as binary, factual, explanatory, introspective questions? What level of each do you think are like, if you had to do a percentage out of that, what would you say?
That's a great question. It's interesting because I was working with the missionaries. Was it last week or was it 2 weeks ago? It was 2 weeks ago. And thinking about the types of questions that they ask. And we kind of do the same thing. My guess is that okay, so let me split it out. My guess is 10% introspective. And so if the 90% is the others, I would split it. No, 10, maybe 20. Yeah, no, I think it's actually probably like 10% introspective and then the rest are split amongst that. I think people ask a lot of factual questions that people don't want to answer because there is a right or a wrong answer.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe we naturally, because you kind of start to feel that as a teacher, we naturally ask more explanatory questions because those are a little bit more comfortable, but easy to ask binary questions as well. Splitting. I don't know the division there, but my guess is that there's not a high percentage of introspective questions. And I would also guess that there is not a direct correlation between the questions and the answers.
Correct.
Like,
not completely, but you are correct. Yes.
Yeah, like not 100%. I think it's probably a little bit more like the teacher not asking a great question does not mean that they're not going to get a great answer.
Correct. Right.
And vice versa. Like they might ask something that was intended to be really introspective and they just get kind of a the answer.
Good. So what I found is that about 15% were binary. Okay. So that's
lower than I thought it would be.
That's 85%. And me too. I thought there would be more binary. That's what I assumed, right? So then that leaves 85% to be the rest of the three.
Mm-hmm.
We had about 35% be factual. So that brings us up to 50%. The rest of the 50% were explanatory. 0 introspective.
Oh my gosh, I thought I was on the low side when
as in not one introspective question.
Are you kidding me?
No joke. Every single time, not one introspective question.
In any of those classes?
In any of them.
I'm rendered speechless.
I know.
I'm a little surprised by that, actually. That surprises me just a tiny bit.
Me too.
Like, I would have thought that there would at least be like one per class. Like, because I think that naturally as teachers, we want to get to application. And I think the application oftentimes requires an introspective question.
No.
Okay, I'm a little surprised.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was too. Actually, I didn't quite notice it at first. I did a few, and then I went back and I'm like, well, wait a minute. How come we don't have one? Okay, I'm missing this. Because obviously they have to be asking some introspective questions. And so I really paid attention. Yeah. What was that? And no, they were not asking introspective questions. So that makes me think, do we understand, number one, the importance of it? Do we understand how to do it? And number three, can we do it under pressure? Because I guarantee I've heard some of these people ask introspective questions before at other times, right? And I've heard it, but I didn't realize, number one, how rare it was. And number two, I think it's more difficult to do just off the cuff.
Right. Okay. So I'll give an example just really quickly of what you're
Okay.
describing. So with these missionaries, when I was doing this training, one of the things that I did a little bit differently this time is that I wanted to do more practice and more demonstration and more really,
Great.
digging into the application. And so at one point, I had the mission president come up and I was going to model the skill of empathy with him, meaning that I was going to empathize with what he said. And so I consciously prepared an introspective question because when you ask an introspective question, the requirement, I put that in air quotes because this is what we have taught, that
Yes.
is that you respond with empathy. You don't just let an introspective question hang, you empathize. And so I prepared this introspective question and I had to write and rewrite it a few times
Mm-hmm.
because I knew that I wanted to get at a really genuine place with the mission president. And I didn't want it to be I had to have the right level of trust. In other words, you can't ask a super deep introspective question in a public setting without there being some priming of the pump
Gaining it.
and
Yes.
some kind of, prepping and all of that stuff. And so if you were to prepare your introspective question, you also have to back out and realize that you're going to need to build up to being able to ask it, like almost earn the privilege of asking it through the other questions and interaction that you get. And so it surprised me because I was framing this exercise around that introspective question, just how much effort I had to put into doing it well.
I like that. So, in fact, I like that so much that I'm going to change how I do this right here.
Oh,
I put it the wrong way.
all
This
right.
right here. Then I'm going to change that. You know what I need to do is add a little bit in here of Q. I'm going to take the I here and I'm going to move it over and I'm going to add. Oh, here we go. Empathy. How many
Mm.
times did the instructor respond with empathy? Okay. If we add that in there, and as you were saying that, I was thinking back, at any point did they respond with empathy? And I couldn't think of any. And that's really a lot of times the bridge to an introspective question and the continuing of introspective questions. But if you don't have the empathy, then you oftentimes will never get to the introspective questions.
Okay, so what I hear you saying, and I want to make this super explicit, is that it's an empathy sandwich around the introspective question,
Yes, it
right?
is.
Because you earn the privilege of getting a genuine answer from someone by building trust. And so, what they need to see throughout this interaction in the classroom is you genuinely responding with empathy to even the explanatory comments that are made. They need to see you validating, they need to see you engaging, because if you've brushed past people's comments, they are not going to trust that you're not going to do the same thing with their very genuine, heartfelt answer, and therefore they won't give it to you.
Right.
And so, you modeling empathy, even when you don't need to, by engaging in people's answers and repeating back what you hear them say, literally like repeating back what you hear them say, validating it, making sure you heard it correctly before moving on, that will build trust amongst the participants and they'll feel like, okay, this teacher genuinely wants our comments and genuinely values what we have to contribute. And then when you ask an introspective question, you have to then put it on the other side as well and do the same thing and offer empathy before. So it's like you're priming the pump and building trust through the empathy that you model throughout. And then once somebody answers an introspective question, you absolutely have to give the same.
Good. That's a great explanation. The empathy sandwich. I
Yes.
love the empathy sandwich, which makes it, if I may put it in a little different words, it makes it easier for the person to respond in an introspective way, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but I just realized something as you said that. It also makes it easier for the instructor to ask an introspective question. And I've never put that together. When we respond with empathy, say someone, and I watched this over and over and over, and I'm thinking, okay, are they going to get to the introspective question? They'll ask an explanatory question. What do you think should be done here? No, right? They go, that was good. Anyone else? And then move on. Had the instructor said, oh, so what I heard you say is this and this and this, right? Well, no, actually, they get a little bit more, and then they can follow up with something like, and how do you, after that happens, how do you feel about it? Right? And it's so much easier to ask that kind of a question naturally, but to just jump from an explanatory question to an introspective question not only is difficult, but can also be maybe a little bit awkward at the same time.
Beautiful.
And so we stay away from it. So we don't want to do it.
Right. Because it is a jump.
Yeah.
So empathy serves as the bridge to get there. And the questions come more naturally. And so like if you think about it, what you just did is asked a question that would not have been scripted because it was an introspective question that came as a result of somebody's answer.
Right.
And so what I hear you saying is that those questions will naturally flow out of empathy if you genuinely engage in those. Okay, so I have to share one more thing that was
let me tweak that just a little bit. I will say more naturally flow out.
More naturally.
They may not naturally just flow out, I could see where people would have problems coming up with introspective questions still, but it will be more natural. I'll say that.
Fair. No, I think that's appropriate. I think that's a really appropriate clarification because you don't want it's not always going to happen that way.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
But it could. So, no, this is what I was going to say. This was something really interesting and unscripted that happened when I had this experience with the mission president.
Yes.
So what you're describing where you just said, what would you do or tell me what you think or whatever, and, you start to get an answer to an explanatory question, you empathize, and then the person kind of starts to naturally share a little bit more because you've empathized, right? That is one of the beauties of empathy. So I asked this introspective question of the mission president, and he started to share, and I reflected back what I heard him say, and then I paused. And he stood there for a minute and he's like, and he got deeper. I reflected it back. He got deeper. I reflected it back. And so I asked him to describe to the missionaries, this is totally unscripted, what had happened in his mind as we were having this, private conversation publicly, so to speak.
Yeah.
And he said, when you paused, like you invested in what I said and then you paused, he said, I found myself wanting to share more. And I found myself thinking harder about the answer that I'd just given to see if it really reflected how I felt. You gave me that space to be able to reflect. And he said, and as I did, my answer became more clear to me and it got deeper naturally. But the power of that came in the pause. And when I was empathizing and repeating it back to him, that was part of the pause. It wasn't the silence. It was him pausing what he was saying and then hearing it back. And in that space, refining it and wanting to go deeper. And so he did. He ended up sharing this really beautiful, response with everybody to that question. And it was instructive to me that our empathy, so even if it's like you said, empathy in response to an explanatory question gives people space to naturally go deeper themselves.
Yeah, it does. One thing that you said, I absolutely loved, and it kind of made a light bulb just shine for me just now. That the space where the mission president had to rethink what he just said to see, is that really what I meant? Or is that really what's going on? When we ask a question, someone answers it and we say, good. And we move on to the next one. they don't get that chance to rethink, obviously, right?
Yeah.
But when I have found that a lot of times when we ask questions, the answer that a lot of people will give will be the first thing off the top of their head. And they'll just, okay, that's going to be my kind of template answer for this question. There you go.
Question.
And
Yeah.
then if you go back and empathize and say, so what I heard you say is da 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 da, right? It gives them time to stop and think, well, yeah, but really, I just kind of threw that out there. Do I really think that?
Yeah.
Or actually, you know what? It's a little bit different than that because I hadn't really thought about it. I hadn't really thought about the answer. I just gave you what came to the top of my mind.
Right.
Very surface level.
We popcorn in class.
We do.
Right?
We don't pause.
And so, yeah, exactly. There's not a lot of pausing space, and empathy creates space.
Yeah.
For reflection.
And so it's really easy for students, I'll say students, learners for the class to pop off a question, do the popcorn question. Mm-hmm. But when we give them a bit of empathy, it helps them get a little bit deeper. And then they go deeper in a more introspective way. It's easier for us to ask clarifying questions, which a lot of times are introspective. All of a sudden the spirit rushes in and we all start learning from their experiences, from their comments. Because I'll tell you, most of the time, I would say 90+% of the time when someone answers a question in a class, my thought, and I don't do this on purpose, but my thought is, okay, yeah, okay. Rarely is it, whoa, that's deep. That's a good point. And I say 90, and I think I'm being generous, actually. I think I'm being really, really generous. It probably is like 98% of the time that I'm having those thoughts. Almost never is it, wow, you brought up something that was incredible. It's just the surface level answers. And we're okay with that. We just say, okay, move on. Yes, let's go. Yeah. Next question. Yeah. Let me ask another factual question, and we move on.
You know what's so interesting, Kev? Like I was thinking about, that class, the adult religion class that I taught that I mourn not teaching anymore because I loved it so, so much. I actually experienced a different statistic. I would say that oftentimes the best insights in those classes came from the participants. And so I frequently found myself going, dang, I wish I could take notes. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
But I'm telling you, it was unique. It was
a unique class. It was excellent. Yes.
It was unique. It was unique. But it gives me, so what you're describing, I think 100% of us can relate to, right? Because you're thinking more about the direction that you need to take the class in. You're preparing your reply, in essence, to whatever somebody has said, rather than really trying to invest in what it is that they're adding or contributing. And so what I think we're suggesting is that so much of our mental investment actually needs to be going into what people are contributing versus keeping our mental focus on our script.
Yeah. I love that. But then, then do we go in without a script?
So it goes back to your Elder Bednar comment at the very beginning, right?
Right.
Do we go in without a script? And I would say that I think if you are more comfortable with a script, you can have one and be prepared to mentally shred it the minute class starts. Because sometimes people need that to feel comfortable and not anxious. And I can tell you that part of what I have done in the past, depending on the format, like I've gone in and taught the youth, and I would never do this with the youth. But if I'm going in and I'm teaching adults, for example, and, I, during COVID, got in the habit of creating something that people could follow so that they could do their own study during COVID. We were doing it virtually, and they wanted to be able to take it and, use it in their family study and stuff. So I got in the habit of kind of writing out what we were going to do, but then I had to mentally be willing to completely throw it away. But they still had access to my flow of, I taught. So I got in the habit of scripting, But then I learned the value of mentally shredding it.
That's tough.
It is tough, but it actually still felt good to me to do that work. Like it was work to get
Good.
that
Sure.
prepared
Sure.
and flesh out my thoughts. And what came out of it also was that I could find places where I tripped because I would study so thoroughly that I would trip and find places where I was tripping. And then those are the places that I would be like, ooh, let's dig into that as a group. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so
Oh,
that's,
so you
I
mean
guess,
like spiritually trip where you're like,
yeah,
oh, that there's a little bit of dissonance
dissonance.
there.
Yeah.
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 I like that.
So I'm not saying that's the right way. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just saying I think that if you choose for your own comfort to do it, also be prepared to shred it mentally.
Shred it. That is one of the Sesame Street phrases of the day. Be prepared to shred it. I like that. Now, okay, here's something that I would recommend for everyone to do is to have a friend or a spouse or someone who may be in the class and then give them kind of what I wrote out. For those of you just listening, I had it if on YouTube, on Facebook. You'll see this even on Instagram. I'm sure you'll see it where you can just take that model, and it's not the perfect model. Change it to whatever you want, right? It's what I used.
Yeah.
Great. Do something else if you want.
But it's a good template.
Yeah, but then go through it and have them mark it and have them time it. Use a chess timer and time it back and forth and see what you talking is compared to the class talking. How many of what type of questions were asked, what type were answered, how much time, and one of the things I didn't do is how much time was spent on stories. But for example, if I speak 75% of the time and I've asked 8 questions, most of the time I was telling stories or explaining things, right? So how much of the, I mean, you can just naturally see how much of the time was, I'm the one who knows it all. So I'm going to tell you how it all works and kind of thing compared to asking questions. So, yeah, I would just highly recommend that you have someone do that and then come back after and say, all right, there it is. And then you can take a look at it and say, oh, look at that. I asked this many questions and they were rhetorical and I didn't have anyone answer those. I just kept going. But I think that there's, it's like finding the sugar in my dried cranberries. It's like, holy cow, that's there. I had no idea. I need to weed that one out because that's not helping me at all. I didn't realize that I know this many lesson calories. Is that a thing? Can I coin that?
No,
lesson
that's
calories?
The most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. Lesson calories.
And there are empty lesson calories.
Oh, I see. Okay, that's actually I'm
Right?
jiving now, but that's ridiculous still.
Okay, let's track back. Go back. Empty lesson calories.
Uh-huh.
I think there's something to that.
Yeah, we want it to be meaty and earn every calorie.
Yes. If you're going to be up there expending energy and doing it, make it worth it. Make it worth it, right? Some people will, okay, I'm just going off on this a little bit, this idea, to flesh it out in my head. If we just take junk food and we're just eating it, we're actually not totally enjoying it. I don't think, at least I don't, it's just like, okay, I'm just eating it, right? But if I have to hold back and say, no, when I get dessert, okay, let's say,
appreciate it.
Yeah, once a week, I'm going to enjoy that. And I'm going to, if I'm going to use those calories, if I'm going to eat those calories, it's going to be worth it right there. Yeah. Rather than just empty blah, I'm eating it and that's my normal thing.
Yeah. And you're saying like your 20% is basically rich. That 20%, you're going to appreciate the 20% that you contribute, and you're going to be selective about what you choose to contribute because you recognize you only own or have a right to 20% of that.
Yeah.
And so you're going to frame everything differently if you're like, this is all I got. Okay, so really fast, I'll be super quick. One of the things that Todd's done as a bishop is decided to try and change up sacrament meeting because he's like, our ward owns sacrament meeting. Like, it's not like there's something in the handbook about like the contents, yes, but the sequence and the timing and the everything else isn't.
It's up for
And
grabs. Okay.
so he's been doing like these little 5-minute talks
Mm,
instead of, two 10 to 15 minutes, adult speakers and one whatever. And when somebody tells you you only have 5 minutes, those
sure.
are meaty talks. It's
Mm,
awesome. So you get the best of what somebody's thinking because they have such a short amount of time. So they've kind of weeded it down to here's the richest part of my message. And it's awesome.
that is pretty neat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
because
so
you have,
that's kind of what we're talking about
yeah.
doing as teachers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Give yourself less time.
Wow. It's Mark Twain, was it Mark Twain? And I think I mentioned this before. Mark Twain, if I remember correctly, he said something along the lines of, or wrote to someone saying, I'm sorry I'm sorry my letter is so long. I didn't have enough time to make it shorter.
Right. That's
Something
so
along that,
good.
right?
Yes.
Isn't
Yep,
that
yep,
true?
yep, yep.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's if I and so another way that I think about it, going back to what you were saying, is if I'm going to be here, this time that I'm going to give for that 20% or that 15% of my class where I'm talking, it's got to be good and it's got to be
Mhm.
full, rather
Mhm.
than just empty calorie, lessen calories, just talking blah 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 blah. Right? It's got to
Yeah.
be seriously good. If I'm going to take the time to do it, then let's make it worthwhile.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I like it.
Boy, I'm thinking about different things. Empty,
So much good
lessen
thought today,
calories.
Jeff.
Goodness gracious, I love this. I like this. This is so much fun, Julie. Thank
It
you.
is fun. It is fun. I love it.
And we come up with new ideas as we're talking, and
And new words and all
I,
sorts of things.
I know how
I don't
exciting.
even remember the word, but I just remember feeling like a doofus when I said it.
Yeah, I think I'm going to put that in the description of the podcast and spell it out how I think it should be spelt out and say, Julie made up a new word. Here it is.
Unnecessary.
It was very good, though. Well done. Thank you, Julie. Again, if you're listening, I would highly recommend to go to one of the video platforms to just see the outline. We described it, but just go check out the outline and then have someone sit in your class and do it. And just and don't do anything different. Just teach your lesson and then come back and say, okay, what did I do? And see if there was something there that you didn't expect that you can change to make it even better. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Love it.
Love it. All
Bye.
right. Take care, everyone. Bye.